Hello, folks. This is Ravinder Sachdev with the US India Political Action Committee. And today we have the pleasure and honor of having a very dynamic, full of energy candidate, Victoria Virasingh. She's running for the Congress from Virginia, the 8th district. You know, a very interesting district right around the Beltway. So in the heart of American politics per se, so to say. And she's taking on an incumbent, and that's quite a challenge. So we look forward to hearing her story. And folks, if you're listening, those who are listening to this podcast, oblique broadcast, please pitch in. We'll share with you her website. And as you know, that for any candidate, perhaps as the campaign gets deeper and intenser, one of the key things we need, or the candidates need, are is any kind of support, any kind of contribution, especially campaign funds for running the campaign, because a campaign to get a message out needs a lot out there, right? So without any ado, may I invite Victoria for your opening remarks. Please tell us why you're running and where you're running from, and how do you see the landscape for you?
Well, first of all, it's such a pleasure to be here with you virtually having this conversation. As a leader in the Indian American community, I'm really honored to be here with you today. My name is Victoria Virasingh. I was born right here in Arlington, Virginia, the heart of Virginia's 8th district. My father is Punjabi and my mother is from Ecuador in South America. They met here in Virginia, in Northern Virginia. They fell in love, they got married, they had me. And our story, my story, is a story of millions of immigrants, first generation Americans, working class Virginians that are here and are aspiring to achieve the American dream. I was the first in my family to go to college. I got a full ride scholarship to Stanford University. I got my bachelor's degree, my master's degree. I was working for Senator Dianne Feinstein in her DC office before transitioning into the technology industry out in Silicon Valley, where I spent the bulk of my career. When I came back here to Northern Virginia, I dived headfirst in local community work, working at a school, local political work, becoming very active as the vice chair of outreach for the Arlington Democrats, was a precinct captain. I engaged also with I'm a board appointed commissioner to the Arlington Economic Development Commission. And all of these experience, really shed to light, my stories is also the story of the American dream. But what has happened to this American dream in the past 30 years? The American dream has become harder and harder for us to reach. How can something be ours, but not for us? And that's why I made the decision to run for US Congress, to fight for an American dream that's working for everyone, especially using my technology background to help provide a perspective that I believe is missing from the halls of Congress in general.
Thank you so much, Victoria. That gives us a broad idea to our listeners who are listening in or watching this broadcast, or the video and the audio. What is your website for the benefit of our listeners? Because they can go to your website and check out more and look how to engage more with your campaign or to learn more about your campaign. So what is your website, please, if you could share?
My website is www.victoriaforcongress.com. It's very easy. If you have Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, our handle is Victoria, then the number 4, VA. So please come and engage us. If you want to send us an email, it's info@victoriaforcongress.com.
Thank you so much, Victoria. So folks, the website, you have it there. So if this triggers your interest, and we do hope that this conversation triggers your interest to know more about her, and hopefully to contribute some of your dollars or your time to her campaign. That's it, Victoria. I mean, a couple of things. How does the landscape look for you? You're running us against an incumbent who's pretty well known there, who's been there for 4 terms, right? I think 8 years. So how do you find yourself positioned in this campaign right now?
That's a great question. So it's just 2 of us in this race. And to step back a little bit, the dynamics of this congressional district, we are D plus 27. What that means is we're a Democratic stronghold. 78% of our voters voted for President Joe Biden. So really what that boils down to is whoever wins the Democratic primary on June 21st will have a very high likelihood of winning in the November election, just because the electorate is so heavily Democratic. But turnout in a Democratic primary in my district, which is, by the way, one of the most politically sophisticated districts on the coast, has been below 10%. So when we look at who's participating in politics today, typically, you'll find that those who are most active tend to be older, over the age of 60, and tend to skew more white and homeowners. But our district is 48% non-white, or 48% a mix of, there are more than 100 languages spoken in my district. We are also one of the youngest districts in the Commonwealth. Our biggest age group is between 18 and 44. We also we're highly dense. There are parts of this areas where precincts are literally 2 blocks. A precinct, for those I don't know, is basically how we count groups of people, and every precinct is a polling location, and that's how you map out, your voter base. So what that's telling me is that since 10 years ago, since when my opponent first ran, the landscape has changed dramatically. There have been 100,000 new people that have moved into Northern Virginia just in the past decade. These are people who have no recognition of the current congressman. They have no loyalty to him. And these are people who are really engaged. And these are people who are really looking for representation that represents their own lived experience, that represents how they have experienced the world today. The congressman has, I'm thankful for his service. I'm thankful for all the work he's done, not only as a congressman, but for the past more than 30 years that he's been involved in Virginia politics today. But the landscape of politics has changed. It has changed quite a bit. And we're looking to build the future of the Democratic Party. We're looking to build the bench of the Democratic Party. I think it's important for us, in my lifetime, and I just turned 30 a few weeks ago. We have only been represented by men over the age of 65 who also happen to be millionaires as our congresspeople. And when I campaign in my district, I see so much more than that. And I believe it's important for us to put forth candidates and put forth elected politicians who share the lived experience, who have experience working in today's economy, who know what it's like to have a LinkedIn, to have a bad boss, to have to go 9 to 5, to having to navigate the system today. That's the perspective that I'm bringing to this office, and a perspective that many believe, and that's why we've gotten all the support that we've had today, is necessary for US Congress.
Thank you, Victoria. Folks, this is a podcast with the US India Political Action Committee. Rabinder Sachdev here, and I'm having a conversation with Victoria Virasingh, running for the 8th district in Virginia, a new age candidate. Perhaps one could say that. Perhaps that's the way she would position herself, as you could see, and taking on an incumbent in a district where there's a lot of diversity. And interestingly, Victoria, as you were talking, yes, I was doing some research on your district, and the turnout is about 10% or lower than that. So 2 questions. One is that how much of an emphasis, of course, you must be trying to get out the vote, to get out the vote. So what are your strategies for that? And would that be something that you think that you would be able to scale up in terms of your competition, or do better than your competition?
Yeah, absolutely. We have been engaging with so many different communities here for the past duration of this campaign. And obviously right now we're in Get Out the Vote, but you mentioned a really important point, right? The way that I'm going to win, realistically, is by expanding the electorate, is by bringing new people into the political process. Isn't that a good thing? Don't we want that? If voters come into the political process, if they come to the Democratic Party, or we have actually, by the way, Republicans, Virginia's open primary, which means, and actually in Virginia, we don't have party registration,
correct,
which is great. Anybody can vote in the Democratic primary. We are the only Democratic primary happening in Virginia this cycle. So what this tells us is we need to be able to bring more people in. I mean, this is how we win. And we've got to engage our youth, our students, our young people, our communities of color, our Latino community, our Indian American community, our Ethiopian community, our Persian community, I mean, our Muslim community. We have such a wide group of people that are begging to be invited. They want to participate, but oftentimes I'm the only candidate that's come to their place of worship, that's come to their apartment building, that has come to their community center, that has shared in their holidays. How is this possible if we're supposed to be representing the people? So when we think about this race, it's really, engaging people. And a lot of times it's just information, right? People just need to know, how do I vote? Where do I vote? We have early voting for the first time in a congressional primary. You can vote today. If you were listening to this, you can vote on Saturdays. There are many locations. If you go to our website, we have all of them listed out. I'll let you know that unfortunately, we feel like there hasn't been a lot of activity on the parts of, a lot of the organizations and the local Democratic committees that are responsible for making sure that this is known. We've tried we've been doing our very best on making sure this information reaches all people, but it's really important that we give people the tools, that we give people the information that they need for them to make their own choice. And that is what we're doing. We're doing it by these conversations. We're doing it by, going on the radio. We're doing it by social media. We have a extensive field operation. Field operation just means our door knockers, our canvassers, our phone calls, our texting banks, just getting out to the people. And this, I believe, is what's really going to make the difference. And by the way, we're doing it kind of in an unconventional way. We've been engaging. I mean, there are people who are volunteering in this campaign who have never voted before, ever. There are people we're engaging with media, we're engaging with places that have centers of a lot of people that have never really engaged in a political discussion, but we're talking about the issues. We're talking about housing, we're talking about education, we're talking about foreign policy, we're talking about immigration reform, among a host of different issues, the minimum wage, small businesses. And that is what's bringing people into this campaign.
No, that's awesome, Victoria. Thank you. Folks, as you can, listen and you'll interpret things, what she's saying in your own prisms, through your own prisms. But the idea is that, get more people into the tent, and have more people participating and getting to know their candidate, getting to know your candidate, and, discussing the issues you want raised. And we'll come to the issues in a moment, please. So folks, the website once again, please, Victoria, that you have is?
Yes, it's victoriaforcongress.com.
Exactly. So victoriaforcongress.com. Please, folks, if you're listening in, do spend a few minutes, kind of browsing through it and see if the issues that she's talking about, the strategies that she's playing out, and the core of the message of her campaign, which is that, widen or spread the base, and also especially more participation in the democracy. If there's such a low turnout, then obviously you'll end up with whatever the others go in. So if you want to be seeing some reflection of your views with your candidate, then please go out and vote. I think that's also a key message that she is bringing out. Now, that brings us to the issue of issues. Now, within the Democratic Party also, the notion of progressives, right? And I understand one of your core aspects is minimum wage, $18, right? How is that playing out within the Democratic base in your district? What do you think?
It's playing out in a way that reaches people. Just yesterday, I was on a radio show and a listener chimed in and said, what are you going to do about raising the minimum wage? Because it's unaffordable here. My mom came to this country. She works today and has worked her entire career as a manicurist. In the late 80s, she made $5.50 an hour. Fast forward to the pandemic, 2021. The minimum wage in Virginia was the federal minimum wage. That was $7.25. In 30 years, we've had the price of food go up. We've had the price of housing go up, but the minimum wage has not met the standard of living. What that means is that people now have to work 2 or 3 minimum wage jobs just to be able to make it here. When the minimum wage was created, it was meant to sustain, one minimum wage job was meant to sustain a family of 4.
Mhm.
Today, you need 2 or 3 to sustain a family of 4. This
Mhm.
is why we focused on this policy issue of raising the minimum wage. Look, I don't think we should be fighting. We don't think we should be fighting every decade, fight for 15. What are we going to wait 10 years more, fight for 25? No, the minimum wage should be adjusted to meet the standard of living of the locality in which you're in. In Northern Virginia, MIT has a living wage calculator. And based on the standard of living, it calculates what the minimum wage should be. And by the way, this is just to be able to afford to live here. This is
Mhm.
not giving you, a lot of extra wiggle room. It's just to be able to afford the rent,
Mhm.
gas, transportation, food, and any other expenses here in the area. So we need to make sure that the standard of living is increased, that the minimum wage is increasing as the standard of living increases in a particular area. This is so important. Let me tell you, let's talk about the impact of this.
Yeah.
So I talk to a lot of business owners, who obviously were interested in making sure that we're supporting our business community.
Mhm.
The problem is people can't afford to live and work here. So they're leaving. That produces a very high turnover for many of the businesses, small businesses that I'm working in. By the way, let's talk about our teachers. Let's talk about our schools. They're leaving.
Yes.
I worked at a school. Half my teachers left because they couldn't afford to live and work here. Our firemen are sleeping in their cars in between shifts. Is that okay? Our nurses cannot afford to live and work here. We have to raise the floor and just give people an opportunity to afford to live and work in the place where they're in. And in my district, that's why it's a big policy of ours.
Absolutely. Thank you. I mean, another thought which was running once again on the policy issues and then overall within the Democratic Party, the sense, yesterday, I think the district attorney of San Francisco had a recall. There was a recall, right? With the perception being that he was soft on crime, right? So there is this notion also out there that progressives now, okay, there are various labels. You may or may not be defined with any of these labels, right? But when these labels are flying around, the fact that progressives or the progressive wing of the party is soft on crime, is asking for too much, etc. So within the party also there's a shift. Are you seeing some of that, or how are you handling that for your campaign with respect to your specific district?
Look, that's a great question. I think in our community, here in
Uh-huh.
America, in Virginia's East District, there's no doubt, that we have a big problem with policing in this country. I mean, given obviously the monumental Black Lives Matter movement, all of the awareness being given to the ways in which we police, definitely. As a member of our local NAACP chapter, I've
Mhm.
sat in and I've learned a lot about where we should be going. And my stance is, we need safety. We need to protect our communities. Voters probably around every day will tell, well, safety is brought up. So the question is, how do we reimagine policing, right? How
Mhm.
do we think about policing in a 21st century? And we can't talk about this issue without talking about mental health. We can't talk about this issue without thinking about the variety of resources that we currently have in our local jurisdictions, which federal legislation can support, and making sure that each case is handled most in the best way possible. So, and especially with the pandemic, we saw a rise in domestic violence cases here, in the area, and that is extremely important to have, reliable law enforcement to help us deal with that. Oftentimes, that's the only way to do it. Me myself, as a candidate, I've experienced very threatening and concerning harassment, and I
Mhm.
was fortunate to be able to rely on Arlington County Police and Arlington County law enforcement to help me feel safe, and not just for myself, but for my family, for my parents. So I believe that we need to create a system where we are safe, where we are creating, good practices. Let's think about this expansively, right? Let's think about how to incorporate mental health professionals, how to incorporate social workers into some instances where that's the best appropriate response. Let's make sure that we're investing in safety in our communities. I want to make sure that our kids, when I was a young girl, I could leave my home and go biking around the neighborhood. Today, none of my neighbors feel comfortable letting their child, go out biking alone. So that's a shift in our community. But I believe as a candidate, as an elected official, my role would be to promote safety in our neighborhoods, to promote safety for our families, while also making sure that we're handling each incident, each response appropriately.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Folks, you are listening to Victoria Virasingh, a candidate for the 8th District in Virginia, a new age challenger, let's say, to an incumbent from a safe democratic seat. So if she wins this primary, then she is hopefully a shoe-in for the Congress. That would be an amazing achievement for a young and a passionate leader like her, and seeing some of her or listening to some of her views on some of the issues we were touching. So Victoria, I mean, a couple of quick things on the campaign. And as they say, I mean, money is the mother's milk of politics, perhaps, right? So where are you in terms of your campaign fundraising? Because part of the reason folks who are listening in of this podcast discussion with her is to kind of get her message out. And if this message appeals to you, please do contribute via her website, victoriaforcongress.com, right? Or in any which way you can connect with her and see if you can contribute to the campaign. So how is your fundraising going, and where are you vis-a-vis your competition?
It's a great question. So when I launched this campaign, I made a decision. I fundamentally believe we need to get the influence of corporations and special interests out of politics. And what that means is, for us, our donations are purely coming from individuals. No corporate PAC donations. We are fully funded by individual people. That's how I think politics should be. And this year, there's a limit. The limit that any individual can give you for a primary is $2,900. So our average donation is about $33. We've got dishwashers donating to us. We have students donating to us. We have teachers and teaching assistants that are contributing to this campaign. And I believe that when people, give us a donation, and I'll just tell you a story on the phone. This is a beautiful thing in the campaign called call time. And that's when candidates get a list of people to call, and you just call them and you ask them for support. It's truly horrible, but it's what we have to do.
You gotta do.
Yes. So I was going through this list, and I called this woman who we kind of shared similar beliefs and a shared vision for the future. And I asked her, for a contribution, and she said, I'm in this point, she shared a little bit more about her personal life. She is a single mom. She works as a paralegal. Post-pandemic, things have been really tight, economically in their family. And I said, when I heard this, I said, okay, don't give me any money. I don't need to give me. And she insisted, and she said, I have to give you money. She said, because you are my voice, and you have to carry my story with you so that you can fight for us. And she gave me a donation, and that has really stuck with me, because when people invest in me, whether it's $50, $100, it's not just the money. It's a belief. It's an investment. They're giving me their story. They're giving me their voice. And they are hoping, and they're investing in me so that I can carry that forward, so that I can share that, so that I can fight for the policies that are going to help her as a single mom working here in Virginia. And that's what I think is really the difference of this campaign and how we are funded. And obviously, as you mentioned, funding is really important. We are limited on how many things that we can do, right? How many yard signs we can purchase, how many people we can hire to go out and knock doors, how many phone calls we can make, because all of that costs money. And the more money we have, the more reach we have. So your donation helps us just expand our reach. All the money that comes in immediately gets funneled out into the community. It immediately gets funneled out into voter outreach, get out the vote, helping us reach more people. So, I'll say this, look, we've had people who support the incumbent, who like him, but are also supporting us. And it's not a rebuke on the incumbent. It's just a desire to change. It's a desire to support the future of the Democratic Party.
Sorry, sorry. Yeah, yeah. So I'm sorry. Yeah.
So, you know, your investment is really promoting democracy. It's promoting getting out the vote. It's promoting reaching younger and more diverse communities. I mean, I'm happy to do the work. You know, I knock doors every single day. I'm out in the community every day. And your investment just allows me to bring more people with me. It allows me to reach more people. So I'm happy to do the work. With your contribution, it just allows me to keep buying better shoes so that I'm able to keep knocking all those doors.
No, thank you. I mean, that's pretty interesting, and especially the story you told about the lady, the paralegal, that you can, she was calling you. I mean, while you were speaking, that you would take her issues forward, right? It reminds me, I was reading somewhere that your first fundraiser was maybe your kindergarten teacher or something like that. Yeah.
Yes. So you know, since one of the advantages, and I truly believe that, you know, politics should be local. It should come from grassroots organizing. And I'm running in the district that I grew up in. So, you know, when I launched this campaign, I had so much support from family, friends, classmates, you know, former coworkers here in my district. And one of those was my kindergarten teacher. And she very graciously, you know, offered her home, offered her network, and she hosted this beautiful, you know, fundraiser. And I looked around this room and it was teachers, it was people, you know, some new faces, some very familiar faces. And again, you know, we were all talking about the issues, but that's what politics should be. It shouldn't look like lobbyists, you know, just writing these $5,000-$10,000 checks. It should look like everyday people contributing what they can, participating in politics in the district. All politics is local. And that's how we've approached this campaign. I'm proud of the way that we've approached this campaign. By the way, it's not like I didn't have offers, you know, from people offering to write me these big checks from these corporations or these lobbying firms, and it would have been much easier. Like, it would have been really easy to take that money, and I would have been able to I spent 75% of my time fundraising, and that would have opened up so much more of my time, but I didn't. I decided to stay this course because I believe truly that is the way that we are going to change the way that politics works. By the way, it's also another way that I can inspire other young women, other women who have come from working class backgrounds to get involved. Unfortunately, you know, I am running against the fourth richest man in the U.S. House of Representatives, who's gotten there over the course of his tenure in Congress. And, you know, there's an advantage that comes with that. And it's much harder, you know, for candidates like me who don't have access to pools of wealth that can very easily contribute. But if I'm successful in this path, if I'm able to make it, it'll open up the doors to so many other young women, young men, young people living here in the United States who aspire to get involved in politics, but may not have the financial means to do so. But we're creating a playbook of how you can do that. And by the way, with a platform that I will hopefully have, I'll be able to help our young Daisies get involved. And that's, you know, I have young Indian Americans that come to me, they say, Didi, I see myself in you. Your story is my story, and you give me hope, because sometimes we are born into situations that we cannot control. But it is our destiny, it's our efforts that we can carve our own path there. And that is what I want to do, not only for our district, but for the many young women and men living out in this country. They're looking out of their window and they are wondering, what are they going to be in this world and how they're going to get there? And I'm going to be there to help.
Victoria, that was definitely, I would say that the listeners or the viewers would feel the passion coming through, as you were saying. I mean, when you're talking, I think the passion is very much coming through, and we do hope that, you know, the listeners and the viewers of this podcast, oblique broadcast, you know, would resonate to the passion and to the opportunities or to the hope in the future that you're pointing to. So, I mean, in conclusion, once again, you know, this is the US India Political Action Committee, and we would love folks if you would, you know, visit our website, check it out, listen to the, if you listened so far, then probably you listened to the whole conversation, you know, to the listeners I'm saying. So that would be great and awesome. But do see that wherein you can pitch in some concrete terms, be it volunteering, be it contribution to the campaign. And in some senses, this is quite a, you're blazing a trail of sorts, when you're contesting, as you said, against an incumbent who's been there for 4 terms and is one of the richest men in Virginia, or fourth richest in the US Congress, as you say. By the way, quickly, that's another thing coming out in your campaign. I was reading somewhere that, fine. I mean, you're not finding any chinks in his armor, but fair enough. That's your political strategy, is that you are appreciating what he's doing. You're harping on your positives, right? And I was reading somewhere about your campaign that, in any political campaign, you have to you have to highlight the negatives of the competition also. You're not doing that, but fair enough, you're harping on the positives and you're hoping the positives will take you forward, right? So that said, thank you so much, Victoria. Would you like to have any closing comments once again to our viewers, the Indian American community, or even wider, folks who are listening to this segment and who would be probably in Arlington, or even if not in Arlington, because in this digital age, folks can be contributing and participating in your efforts from anywhere across the US?
That's right. So we encourage participation from all across the US, actually, and from our American citizens living abroad. I spent some time living abroad. I was a Democrat abroad when I was living in Germany, and I loved still being engaged in politics here in the US. Please support, our campaign. Your vote and your participation, your contribution is not just for you. It's for your neighbors, it's for your children, it's for your parents, it's for your community. 1 in 20 people that I will talk to will actually vote. That's just the statistics. And that's really important, because your vote, your contribution matters so much, because it's basically worth 20. And your contribution allows me to talk to 20, 40, 80, into the hundreds and thousands of people. I'm asking for your investment. Your investment in me is an investment in the future of the Democratic Party. It's an investment in the future for our children. It's an investment in revitalizing the American dream. And you touched on a point, like, we've really built this campaign around hope, around positivity, because voters are so tired of the mudslinging, of the negativity surrounding politics. And what I believe we need, especially post-pandemic, as we transition out, especially post, the previous administration, is hope. What we need is change. What we need is to aspire to. What we need is to get money out of politics. We don't need any more millionaires in Congress. We've got enough of them. Let's put in one of us. Let's put in some everyday people. And together, I know that we can make the change we have been waiting for.
Thank you so much, Victoria Virasingh. On behalf of the US India Political Action Committee, I thank you for your time, and I wish you really the best in your endeavors now and always in the future. It was a pleasure having you and speaking with you. Thank you so much, please.
Thank you.